Okay, year 10, we are going to attempt to make some homemade pasta today. Now this is the recipe that I'm going to be using, and I will make sure that there is a copy of this recipe up on our Google Classroom underneath the recipe topic heading. Okay, so let's get started. Let me move this out of the way. Pop that into my recipe holder so I can look at it. What you're going to need is you're going to need a bowl. You don't have to use a bowl, you can just put it straight onto the bench, but I think for this I'm going to use a bowl, and I'm going to have to sieve my flour and my salt together. Now I only have a small sieve. Okay, so what you're going to need to do is you need 250 grams of plain flour. Now mine's already been pre-measured. I'm just going to put all that straight into my little sieve. Now, sifting things gets out lumps. It helps to aerate the flour as well, so that we have nice aerated flour, which is always going to be helpful. So I'm just going to quickly sieve this. And the last little bit, I'm just going to grab some salt. It does say 5 grams of salt. So about 2 pinches. And then sieve that through as well. Last little bit. All done. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to do, it says to make a well in the middle of the flour and salt, and then it says to add the eggs. Now for this recipe, you're going to need 1 whole egg plus 3 egg yolks. So this little container here, I've got my whole egg. And in this container, I have 3 egg yolks. Okay. So with a butter knife, I'm going to mix that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my water. Now the water, I need 500 mils. No, I don't. I need 50 mils. Add that in. Keep cutting this in. You can see that it's starting to come together. This I should be able to now use my hands, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get a little extra flour and just make sure that my hands are nicely floured so it's not too sticky. And just kneading all this together. Now that I have most of it kneaded together, I can bring it out onto the bench. And I'm just going to knead this until it all comes together and forms a nice dough. So what I'm going to do is once this comes together, I'm going to rest it for about 30 minutes Okay. And I will actually rest it for that amount of time today because I can't. I'm at home. Okay, so I'm going to stop the video while it's resting and then come back to it and show you how to cut it and roll it out into fettuccine. Now, you could use a pasta machine to do that. I have a pasta machine. However, I don't know that all of you have a pasta machine, so I'm actually going to do it by hand today. But I just want to get this a little bit more combined and a little bit more even. Not quite smooth enough. Pretty happy with that though. So I'm going to place that back into a bowl. I'm going to cover it with a damp cloth and I'm going to let it rest. Okay, and then we're going to come back and have a look at what it looks like. Okay, I left you about 30 minutes ago with my dough, and all I did is I just used a damp napkin, paper towel, just to cover that because I didn't really want to wet a tea towel. So this is our pasta dough. So what we're going to need to just put some flour lightly on the bench. Now it says to knead lightly, and then what we're going to do is we're going to divide this into two. So just going to knead that lightly. There we go. And I'm just going to grab a knife and I'm just going to grab just a little cutting board. So this goes into half. Okay. Cover the half that you're not using. Okay, and let's work with this piece. And we're going to now use a rolling pin. And we want to get this into a long rectangle. Now, once you have the thickness that you want, you then cut it. Obviously, doing it by hand, you're not going to be able to make a spaghetti because we don't have the attachment to make it a cylinder like spaghetti is, because spaghetti's actually got a hollow center. So what we're going to be making here is fettuccine, which is a flat pasta. And all I'm doing here is I'm just trying to get my shape into a rectangle so that I'll have an easier shape to work with when I cut it. Now, if I didn't want to cut it, I could use these long strips for lasagna. And then you would just layer them with your meat sauce and your bechamel sauce in your baking dish, and then you would bake it in the oven. Almost got my rectangle shape. Doesn't need to be perfect. Okay, it's a bit thick in the middle there. Almost done. Okay, so with a sharp knife, I'm not actually going very deep with the knife here. I don't want to scratch the bench top. And that's all you do. Now with these pieces, it's best to make sure they're separated. So that's one way, or I can do it like this with a little bit of flour in between. Fold it up, making sure that the edge is straight. And then unroll it. There we go. There we go. So the idea would be to then repeat that process on the second half of your dough. I will come back after I've done that and I'll show you how to cook it. Okay, now we're back and we're now going to have a look at how to cook the pasta. Now most of you know how to do this, it's just a simple boil, but with the fresh homemade pasta there are some differences, okay? So what I have here is I've just got my 2 layers of pasta fettuccine, and I've just put some baking paper between the 2 layers so they don't stick. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop it into the boiling water, and I just need to be conscious of how it's going because it won't all fit into the pan at the same time, and we need to cook it into batches. So I'm just going to grab some tongs, and I'm just going to also grab another container that I can put the cooked pasta in. Okay. That should be about it. Now, when this pasta is cooked, it should float to the top, okay? So we're just going to wait for that. And hopefully you guys can see that happening. I'll just move this back a little bit. And you can start to see how it's starting to float to the top. But it's not on a rolling boil yet, so I just want to keep it a little bit longer. So one of the differences we have in testing whether this pasta is cooked compared to originally like packet pasta is that the packet pasta is fully dried. This fresh pasta is still quite soft. So using the soft test, whether when we pinch it to see whether it's cooked all the way through, isn't necessarily going to work for this because it's already soft. So we really are kind of looking at the colour of the pasta and the fact that it is floating to the top of the saucepan of boiling water, and also you'll see that it actually puffs up a little bit, and that's a good indication also. Now the added thing is that this pasta would normally then be added to a pasta sauce and mixed through, and so then if it is a little bit undercooked, it gets that little extra bit of cooking in that respect as well. So I'm pretty happy with this first batch. Just going to drain it off. And because we're cooking it in small batches, it's actually not going to take a huge amount of time. And then we can put the next lot in. I'm going to make sure that it stays as separated as possible before hitting the water, otherwise it will just stick together. I would say that each batch probably needs to be in the boiling water for at least 3 to 5 minutes. This is not boiling yet, okay? So it's at a boil that you start your timer. Starting to boil now. Okay, I'm going to take this bit out. Last batch. Again, we have to wait for it to actually boil before we start our timer. Probably at a simmer now. Okay, from this point, what you would do is you would add this pasta now straight to your frying pan, which has got your sauce in it, and then you would mix that through, and then that would be your complete dish. You can definitely see the colour change in the pasta. It's like it was very egg yellow and now it's more of a sandy colour. So that is how you cook homemade pasta. I hope you guys all have a go, and let me know in the comments on Google Classroom how you think you went with that. Bye for now.